muted.
The presentation today, and we will stop that recording when we get ready to take questions, and we'll make the recording available on the website as well. So with that, those housekeeping details out of the way, let's talk about what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk briefly about why we do risk assessments, what gets assessed, and when we do those. Now, I understand that most of you folks are in grants management, and therefore you live and breathe assessments like this. We're doing that to set a foundation to talk a little bit about how a risk-based approach along with technology can help you better utilize your resources to fulfill that risk assessment obligation. So why do we assess risk? Well, the obvious answer is uniform guidance requires it. I'm going to quote from the Grant Management Book of Knowledge. They say the uniform guidance requires that federal awarding agencies conduct a pre-award risk assessment of applicants to determine the prospective recipient's eligibility and to assess the quality of the application before making the award. The GIMBOK, by the way, is an excellent comprehensive resource, and if you're not familiar with that, you might want to check the National Grant Management Association website for information on that. That's the organization that published that. But we also assess to identify recipients who might require additional monitoring and technical assistance. This touches on that risk-based management approach. And based on information that we're seeing in the Federal Audit Clearinghouse, there seems to be an uptick in findings related to risk assessments or the lack thereof and compliance monitoring issues. And based on some anecdotal conversations we've had with some of our clients, we're hearing that federal agencies seem to be a bit more aggressive in monitoring PTE compliance with the uniform guidance. So keep that in mind. So uniform guidance requires that you evaluate your subrecipient's risk of non-compliance. Now, that's easy, right? No problem there. You've got to monitor their compliance activities, and you've got to verify that they're audited as required under the guidance. So based on the uniform guidance in the GIMBOK, you need to assess the quality of their management standards. Do they have management policies? Do those meet your management standards? Are they effective, for example? What's the history of their performance? Maybe you have some history with them. If you don't, then you're going to have to base that maybe on some publicly available database information, such as from SAM and other sources. If they fall under the requirements for a single audit, were there any findings? You need to look at that. And can they implement statutory and regulatory requirements that are imposed? A lot of pass-through entities are including those requirements directly in the award agreement now. And then any specific issues that you might have. And by the way, assessment criteria, the things you're going to assess a subrecipient on, should be included as part of the notification of funding opportunity. It's only fair to let folks know how they're going to be evaluated. So when do we assess? Probably most of you that do risk assessments do it often between the time you've made your selection and but before you actually execute the award agreement, and that way you can determine if there need to be any special terms and conditions. And that's certainly one place where you can do that. But and the uniform guidance requires that as kind of a standard. But it's a good idea as part of vetting. If there are highly technical or scientific capabilities that are necessary for the project, you might want to vet before then and restrict your notification of award to folks that meet those kinds of requirements. You might evaluate any information that would result in a hard stop prior to your evaluators looking at the applications. Obviously, if they're on a debarred or do not pay list, you wouldn't want to waste the time of your evaluators reviewing their submissions since they can't be awarded anyway. And then, as I mentioned, pre-award, the usual place where you look at things like past performance, reliability of their systems, their capacity to actually perform what they're proposing, and the inherent program risk. We'll talk about that more in a minute. Audit findings, especially those that seem to be repetitive. You look at their history of audits and see that they have had specific findings over the same ones over and over again. That would certainly be a bit of a red flag that they are aware of problems but don't seem to be addressing them. And then you have to think about things like the priority of this project for certain stakeholders. And you can also assess any time during the award period. A lot of people don't think about doing this, partly because it's extra work, but it's a good idea to do it, and especially if you can use technology and other capabilities to sort of do it passively. And we'll again talk more about that in ways so that you're monitoring your subrecipients so that you have early warnings of issues that may be arising. But also specifically if there are modifications to the award, particularly if it's a large modification or if there are new programs or new regulations or guidance come down. You want to stay abreast of those kinds of things. So let's talk about a risk-based management approach. Some of you may have all the time and resources you need. If you do, raise your hands. I suspect I would get a lot of laughs if you all weren't muted to that claim. We know most of us don't. The risk-based approach simply means you're going to use all of your assessment criteria to prioritize those awards based on the level of risk. That way you're able to allocate your resources to those that need more attention and allocate fewer resources to those that are lower risk or lower priority. So there's a lot to consider when you're setting these priorities. It's not just the evaluation of the subrecipient, though. That's obviously important, but it's a bit of a matrix that includes things like the size and complexity of the program. Does it involve actual risk to people and property in some way? And are there an unusually high number of subawards? And is there a past history of known issues, right? And don't forget the softer items like we mentioned before about priorities and visibility. Is this a pet project of the governor or the mayor or someone like that? Is Congress paying lots of attention to this? It's important to be aware of those things. The example I'd use is, let's say you have a $10,000 grant that you give to a new subrecipient, someone you've never dealt with before, so you don't have any history. That's likely going to obviously get less attention than some $10 million award that's the signature program of the governor, even if you gave that to a what you might call a moderately performing but well-established subrecipient. Just because of its visibility and its value, you're going to pay more attention to it. You have to take those things into consideration. So as we thought about that, we came up with the concept of 3 P's of risk-based management. And the first of those is project and program risk. And we think about it from a matrix standpoint. This is just a way to kind of consolidate into 3 main categories here. So this first category is not so much about the subrecipient, but the project itself. And that's where we take into account those things like, priority and visibility, and also the size and complexity of the program, excuse me. Is it a $10 million program, or is it a $10,000 program? You take that into account here. Second category, past performance. Based on your history with them, have they always been in compliance? And also, do they have experience with other agencies and projects of similar size and scope, and have they been successful in those? And so you would rate them in the matrix based on that. So now we're talking about the subrecipients. And then the third one is their policy and management systems. Do they have adequate management systems? As we mentioned, have they had audit findings? Are those audit findings sort of on a consistent basis? Or have they seemed to have been addressing those? So if you plot an award on all 3 of these graphs, you can have a pretty good idea of just how risky the project is overall and the areas where you need to concentrate your attention. We all do this to some extent just intellectually in our brains as we're thinking about these things. But if you come up with some matrix like this where you actually sit down with your team and sort of plot these things out this way, and do it by including information from risk assessments and other sources, you can walk away with a pretty good idea and well thought out concept of what the risk is for a particular program or project. So risk-based management should be, as I mentioned, kind of integrated in a natural part of your overall grants program. Based on the risk level, you might do, for example, desk reviews as opposed to on-site visits. But if it's a larger program, you might do those. Of course, you want to include a monitoring plan that addresses the actions you will take, along with what you expect to be getting from the subrecipient. Make sure that they're complying with the terms and conditions of that monitoring plan, doing audits when it's necessary and appropriate, and of course, deploying technology to help monitor with this. So a lot of time, email and spreadsheets are used tracking down and keeping up with compliance reporting. How many of you probably sitting at your desk have a spreadsheet open that you're looking at, or you've been sending or receiving emails about compliance items this morning, or reports coming in, or trying to track them down? This is kind of the world we've always lived in, and that results in things falling through the cracks, not a comprehensive view of what's going on, and a lot of times duplicative efforts. So technology can help some with that. Using online or web-based solutions can help you automate the simple but time-consuming things like reminders and notifications. And technology should also facilitate people having the right documents and information on hand when they need it, and to allow those to be shared when required. The example I would use is, I suspect everybody here has the experience of you reaching out to touch subrecipients because they're late submitting a report to you, and their immediate reply is, "Oh, Well, I couldn't find the report form that I needed to fill out to send to you. Again, if we were unmuted, it'd probably be a lot of chuckles. Everybody's had that kind of experience. If you can push that out to them and make it available as those tasks come due, you have a slightly better chance of getting the response on time. And, you know, it should, a technology system should be able to give you the reporting that you need real time and dynamically to let you know what's going on with your subrecipients and individual grants so that you can stay on top of that, adjust your priorities as you need to, and address issues before they get even worse. So just to talk a little bit about our application, it very specifically addresses these three areas, which we think are important to supporting a risk-based management approach. It helps you manage your risk assessment process. It sets up and maintains and monitors your monitoring plan, and provides a real-time dashboard so you can see what's going on. So what I'm going to do now is switch over to my browser and log in, and we're going to run through, again, a very quick demonstration of our solution. We're not going to be able to show you anywhere near all of our solutions today, or all of the solution, everything that it's capable of. At the end, we'll provide contact information. You can reach out and see a more complete demonstration if you have interest. But we hope what you get from this is just some idea of how technology can help. And I promise I'm working as hard as I can to get us to the end on time, but you probably noticed I'm Southern, so I'm talking about as fast as a Southern boy can talk. So we're going to log in now as someone who is the pass-through entity, an administrator of department or agency who gives out awards. And this is what most any user sees in our application. We tried to create a consistent upfront interface that both subrecipients and the pass-through entity user see, so everybody can sort of understand what others are seeing. And in this case, we also, and by the way, there's setup in here, so you sort of customize it to you. You set up your entities, your organization, and your subrecipients in here, because your subrecipients are going to interact with you through this system. We also try our best to create reusable items in here so that you're not constantly recreating things. So for example, here is a library of questions, and you can add a question. It comes with some. You can add your own. You provide the answers. And now this library of questions is available to you to create questionnaire templates for your different kinds of programs. We understand depending on the program may drive some of the questions that you have. And so we're going to use this one today. I'm not going to make you watch me build one, but so this is a questionnaire that you might create. The questions can be multiple choice or they can be text-based. And as you can see, we allow a system for you to put in a scoring system. And you can weight the questions and then provide points for the selected answers. You can also require that supporting documents be submitted along with the risk assessment. So for example, if you ask a question about their policies and procedures, you can actually request that they attach those, and then they'll come back after that. So we're going to actually execute a risk assessment. So we're going to click initiate, and we've already put a subrecipient in, the human fund. And so their primary user for this subrecipient is going to get our risk assessment. And we're going to pick a program, and we're going to pick the questionnaire that we want to use, and we can assign a due date. We'll set it pretty short, but you can give them a little more lead time than that. And then we click initiate, and that's all we needed to do now to execute a risk assessment. Now, unfortunately, when you're doing demos, one of the things you have to do is log in and out a lot. So we're going to log in as the admin user for the human fund that we just sent that risk assessment to. Now, this is a subrecipient, so you'll notice, as I mentioned, same interface, but here is our questionnaire that we sent over to that person. And so George can open that up. He can save the questionnaire at any time if he needs to get more information. Usually the questionnaires are a bit longer than this. He, again, makes choices, can provide explanatory comments to go along with an answer. And again, if we had required it, attached documents. You can save your work and come back to it to complete it. We render it as a printable format, that sort of thing. But when you save and submit, you'll notice that it is now no longer in his workbox. And by the way, when we initiated that risk assessment, an email was sent to George saying, you have a risk assessment, you need to log into our grant management system and complete that. And as the due date approached, he would continue to get reminders. So we'll go back in as Linda, and you'll see that indeed, here's that risk assessment for Linda to review. Based on the weights and points that we gave, they got a score of 208. That would mean something to you because you come up with the scoring mechanism. You can look here, you can see how each question was answered, and you can take a look at the comments. Down at the bottom, had we attached documents, the documents would be there. You'd be able to open those and review them. Once you're through, you just complete the review, and you can see that questionnaire is no longer in her active risk assessments, but everything is kept in a completed folder so that it's always available for future reference, along with all the attachments and other documents associated. So now that we've gotten through that, that's a big, so you can invoke a risk assessment anytime, pre-award, during the award, anytime you'd like, you can invoke a risk assessment. Now, the other important thing is helping your subrecipients stay on course with their monitoring plan, right? Getting completing the task to get the information back to you that you need. So we're going to create a grant. We're going to do it very quickly. So we have the concept of creating programs and creating standard tasks associated with the program. And you set that up however you want. You set the tasks, you set their frequency, and whether they're assigned to the subrecipient or to you as the grantor. And by doing that, we're going to invoke those, and then you can also add special terms and conditions. So we're going to give this award to the Human Fund, and we're going to put George in charge of everything, and Linda's going to have to be in charge over here of everything. And we're just going to give it a quick title. And if there were a federal award number, and I know these aren't official award numbers, but we're sort of making it up here, you could put that in for reference. You might have your own award, number. system that you use internally. And let's say this is a $100,000 award. Now, we're not your accounting system. We don't handle the line item detail of your accounting, but we keep some high level information just for the purposes of some reporting that we will do for you. We're going to backdate this a little bit. We're going to set a start and an end date for the award. We'll make this one a year long. If it's a cost sharing award, you would indicate that and the percent or the dollar amount that's supposed to be involved. You would click next. And here you can attach any documents that are pertinent to the grant, a copy of the award agreement, those report formats, the reporting forms that I mentioned earlier can be here, your policy or manual, or any other supporting information. And then this is available here to you or to the subrecipient so that they always have the documents that they always tell you they don't have or couldn't find, right? So you'd simply click choose, you'd get a standard Windows browser, and you'd select the documents and attach them. Then we click next, and here's where a little bit of magic happens. So based on that program that we created, the frequency that we set those items for, and the start and the end dates of the award, it calculated due dates for all of our tasks. So this is our monitoring plan right here. And let's say we had decided this was kind of a high-risk project. So we're going to add some extra tasks. We're going to add some things like actually doing an on-site audit. And I might want to do that, around January. So I'm going to set it for January. And I'm going to assign that to Linda because obviously we don't want the subrecipient doing their own audit. So we're going to assign that there. We're going to create this additional task, and now you'll see that it's here. So in the system, other things like the site inspections are also probably assigned to the agency. But with all of this set up, now we just simply create the grant, and here it is in our list of grants that we have. Now, a number of things happen. As grants become due, the subrecipient will begin to get notifications that they have tasks that are due. If it's active, that means it's within 28 days of being due, so they start getting reminders once a week up until it's due, and then they get them a little more frequently afterwards. But this is, now we're back in the subrecipient's workbox. Here are all the tasks that George has to do. George is a little bit behind here, so he needs to catch up. He has submitted some tasks, and then there's always an all task tab. One of the things that George can do here is if he has other people in his organization that he works with, he can reassign tasks to them. And I always forget to do this. So we're going to reassign a task to Kramer, and now this will appear in a workbox for Mr. Kramer, and as it comes due, as it becomes active, he will get notifications that he has tasks which he needs to do. So again, very important to keeping you on top, you and your subrecipients on top of the tasks that they need to do. Automated reminders, you don't have to think about it. You don't have to track down the documents. So in fact, let's submit a document. So we're going to submit a draw request. A draw request is a little bit of a special one because we're going to actually put in the amount of the request. And I can also add comments here and then attach all the supporting documents that accounting needs. As I mentioned, all the document attachments work the same way, and we'll save and we'll submit this. And it's kind of hard to tell, but that left George's workbox. Once again, very quickly, we're going to log back in as Linda. as Linda. Can't wait till voice recognition is a little bit better. So here's a draw request that got submitted. We're going to open that up. This is Linda. This is the PTE taking a look at it. You can see the comments, can see the amount of the request. And let's say after reviewing the documents down here, Linda says, no, I'm going to disallow some things. You're only going to get $450. You can update it here. And again, this is just here. This is only record keeping and reporting. Also, let's say all the documentation wasn't complete or accurate. Linda could make some comments, and one of her choices is to reject this task. By doing that, it goes back to the workbox of George, and he gets a notification that he has a rejected task that needs his attention, and he can go in, respond to her comments, add additional comments, and resubmit it. You can go back and forth as much as you want there. Again, helping you keep all your communications in a central place, sending reminders and notifications all the time, and keeping the information that your subrecipients need available to them. We'll go ahead and accept this, and then we're going to jump in and see just some of the reports here. I'm going to go in as the highest level user that I have here, and so that we can sort of start at the top, because depending on where you are in the organization depends on the information you see. So here's a real-time dashboard of our departments that are under our organization. We happen to have these departments. We may have more. We only show the 8 worst offenders here. If you're a smaller organization like this one seems to be, we only have 6, so we show them anyway. So these are how our departments are doing. So I can quickly see, based on the orange line, who has deficient grants, right? So I right away know which departments need my attention. We're going to select this one because it's a good one. And so this particular department is working with 2 subrecipients. And it seems like New River Community Action's doing pretty good on their stuff. They only have some active tasks and a lot of inactive tasks, so nothing's late or anything. If we take a look, though, now I'm a little concerned about this particular subrecipient. And when we take a look there, they have active tasks. These are tasks that are within a month of being due, aren't yet. This represents their inactive tasks. These are tasks that are overdue, so they have passed their deadline and have not been submitted yet. These are accepted and these are rejected tasks. So you get a real good status that you can drill down to and see where your issues are, and very quickly start working with those organizations to remediate their problems. So again, a way to save you time and have quick access to being able to monitor where your problems are, all part of a good risk-based management system. So that's it. I ran a little long after all. I apologize for that, but we will open it up for